Arcadia is the homeland of the Fae, where banality and mortal bodies are but horrifying nightmares to scare childlings. The idea of Arcadia serves as hope for changelings, hope that the gates to their homeland will open once again. And although all Kithain have at least a few memories from having lived there during the previous ages, no changeling knows how much of this remembrance is real and how much is wishful thinking or fancy. In the end though, what is real when discussing dreaming? Hello, and welcome to a new lore video on Changeling the Dreaming. In the last video, we discussed the history of the Kithain, and in this video, we'll continue. So if you missed the second part, you can watch that here first. On July 20th, 1969, humanity witnessed the moon landing live on television, and all of the hope, fear, and wonder of the previous decade burst forth. Across the world, all with fairy sight witnessed ancient trods manifesting on land, on sea, and in the air as the centuries-gone She rulers returned on majestic steeds and in chariots of light and darkness. They emerged in all corners of the world, and balefires burned brighter than since before the shattering. For a brief moment, everything in the world had a chimerical quality, but centuries of amassed banality muted it and immediately closed the gateways to Arcadia. Guided by the dreaming, or perhaps through their own pre-arrival planning, the first generation of Arcadian She forced themselves into human hosts. Mortal witnesses described friends or family collapsing for a brief moment, then rising, confused for a short time, but brimming with confidence and an aura of regal quality. It's also true that some She souls entered the autumn world in silence and through unseen trods, and those who did inhabited the bodies of newborn babies, waiting to grow up and join the ranks of nobility as, some believe, a contingency plan if something went wrong during the return. However, no matter the chosen human body, they all belonged to someone wealthy and influential, or were members of highly valued and powerful families in society. It didn't take long for the returned nobles to stake their claims over freeholds and territories abandoned centuries ago. Although commoners' hard work secured the existence of balefires and holdings, the Arcadians refused to give credit for such actions. Therefore, most changelings refused to hand anything over to those that abandoned them and left them at the mercy of banality. Minor skirmishes, assassinations, and blackmailing grew increasingly common in Kithain society, and it didn't take long for the nobility to wield their command of the sovereign art obedience, sovereign being the art of controlling commoners. It is one of the most political arts commonly practiced by the Kithain, and exists largely to ensure the maintenance of their political structures. Commoner changelings find this art exploitative, an unfair trick for keeping the high classes high and the low classes low. Despite conflicts, both parties openly declared their intent to find peaceful solutions, regardless of acts of violence intended to derail such hopes. Recognizing the haughtiness and disregard for others they once had, She of houses Liam and Skahak sensed the escalation in conflicts earlier than any other autumn fae. Not wanting to wage war with those who they remained with during the interregnum, nor their brethren, the houses adopted an official neutrality policy, promising to act as mediators and messengers if requested. However, this degree didn't prevent individual members of the houses to cast their allegiance with the She for which they felt an affinity. Though disputes were common, they rarely turned to open violence between the Arcadians and the commoners. However, a clandestine group of Arcadian She invited the most prominent commoner leaders to a Beltane masquerade to initiate peace talks in earnest and to celebrate achievements performed during the interregnum. Though distrustful of invitations, the commoners felt secure in the honor of She. While waiting for their hosts to arrive, the commoners gathered in the dining hall of the estate to which they were invited, only to be slaughtered by masked assassins wielding cold iron knives, the ultimate representation of banality to the Kithain. News of the Beltane massacre quickly spread on both sides of the conflict, and as commoners prepared for revenge, the demands of House Fiona to investigate and punish guilty parties went unheard. The time for discussions ended with blood on the walls, and only war remained. 10 days after the Beltane massacre, the returned nobility gathered and the Accordance War began, a historical event known to changelings as the Battle of the Bay in San Francisco, with the She conquering the city in less than a week. Once the city was secured, the Sidhe made moves to begin conquering the nation. While mortals fought in Vietnam, so too did the Kithain go to war. Increasing amounts of disturbances during demonstrations, gang violence, and riots occupied mortal police departments, while Fae fought to determine the future of their kingdoms. War crimes took place on both sides, and commoners didn't restrain themselves from using cold iron weaponry as a reminder of the Beltane massacre. What the Arcadian Sidhe lacked in modern weaponry, though, they quickly made up with access to forgotten arts. Refusing to surrender in the face of their magically superior enemies, commoners continued the war, making the Arcadian Sidhe pay for every freehold and inch of territory they occupied. Along the road, their bond with the Dreaming led returnees to rediscover lost trods and balefires, on which they then constructed freeholds from which to rule their courts. In December of 1973, the Sidhe forces surrounded New York City by taking out vital commoner holdings to the north and south of the city. The city's commoner general, a renowned and honorable troll strategist named Liros, saw through the Sidhe's tactics and realized that the plan was to gather the commoners in Manhattan before making one final assertive strike to end the resistance. In response, General Liros ordered commoners to withdraw to the island while leaving enough defenses to convince the Arcadian forces that their strategy worked and to make them pay for every inch of territory with glamour and blood. Once the Battle of Manhattan commenced in earnest, the Sidhe had the upper hand and slowly encircled Liros' headquarters. In a final effort to catch the nobility off guard, the troll general ordered all his forces to disperse and engage in street battles rather than organized war. His decision to do so changed the tide of the war, and battles raged across the entire island. The exact account of events of what occurred next are uncertain. What is known is the general of the Sidhe, known as the High King, was found a short time later, with a knife of cold iron in his back. Following the High King's death, Liros had difficulties controlling the most violent changelings in his army. Soon, a new High King rose in prominence amongst the Sidhe, named David Ardry. He proved compassionate and empathetic towards commoners, and truly desired to unify all Kithain in peace. The commoners' memories of the Beltane massacre proved too hard to overcome, however. 3 years of unanswered invitations went by until a group of trolls met with David and confirmed his intentions, thus making discussions a real possibility. Their acceptance of the young king spread like wildfire throughout the nation, leading more prominent commoners to follow suit and accept the invitation. David's first war was one of diplomacy, and his trials at the negotiation table are those of political legend. While commoners demanded the return of conquered territory and for David to make formal restitutions, as well as apologize for the events of the war, the Arcadian Sidhe relentlessly dismissed all requests, referring to the Dreaming's acknowledgement of their right to rule. In time, David slowly convinced both sides to concede as he explained his vision for a new kingdom. Though many of the Arcadian Sidhe saw his treaty as a betrayal of their kith, the years of warfare and bloodshed swayed enough influential nobles to David's cause. The Treaty of Concord's terms confirmed the Sidhe right to rule, and decreed that changelings would live by the medieval paradigm that they preferred. It also recognized the huge efforts that commoners performed in service of the Dreaming throughout the interregnum, and made it possible to grant them ennoblement in service of the kingdom. Furthermore, by creating an advising body known as the Parliament of Dreams, the treaty granted commoners unprecedented influence under Sidhe rulership. Finally, the agreement ratified the 7 kingdoms and united them under the name Concordia, which David felt honored the treaty itself and the spirit of unity that it represented. In the next Changeling the Dreaming lore video, we'll finish our discussion of Kithain history into modern knights. I make World of Darkness lore videos multiple times a week, so if you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Now remember this, Kithain. It is dangerous to dream too little.